national borders of Western European countries such as Switzerland appear to have been unchanged for centuries, but this is not the case, for the Swiss boundary was only finally fixed during the 19th century. While the cantons at the heart of the Confederation around Lake Lucerne have been allied since 1291, the lands at the edges of the country have only gradually come together to form the Switzerland we know today. The western region, located in the Jura mountain range, is amongst the most recent to be fully integrated. French is spoken here, a legacy of long involvement with its close neighbour. The area was given to the bishops of Bâle in the year 999, and these prelates were to have great influence for the next 500 years. In 1384, Bishop Imier granted a charter to any of his subjects willing to settle in the land of the High Pines, exempting them from all tithes and taxes in perpetuity. These pioneers were given the name of Franches Montagnes, or free mountain dwellers. During the late Middle Ages, the region gradually came under the influence of Canton Bern, which began to impose its will and levies over the independent-spirited communities of this wild, wooded land. After a protracted struggle, independence was eventually granted, and Switzerland's newest canton, Jura, came into being in 1978. The neighboring region, Neuchâtel, was governed by various foreign rulers, including the Dukes of Orléans and the King of Prussia. In 1814, it became the 21st canton of Switzerland, although the Prussian ruler still retained the title Prince of Neuchâtel until the middle of the century, when the connection was finally severed. In the 12th century, settlers moved from the lake region across the mountains to found new colonies, one of which was La Chaux-de-Fonds. Originally, this was a small farming hamlet, although today it's one of the chief cities of Canton Neuchâtel and the third largest in French-speaking Switzerland. The town was almost completely destroyed by fire in May 1794 and rebuilt on an innovative grid plan, which gives a modern air to the streets. The citizens here have always been forward-looking and were the first in the region to embrace new inventions such as the telegraph, piped gas, electricity, and the railways. The event which transformed the fortunes of this town was the introduction of watchmaking around 1705, and the Horological Museum here houses a world-class collection. A school of horology was founded in 1865, and during the next decades it established a magnificent collection which was finally opened to the public in 1902. Since then, new acquisitions have been continually added, and now over 3,000 items are on display in the modern complex, which was opened in 1974. In the two impressive exhibition halls, temperature and humidity are precisely controlled to keep these precious items in top condition. 29 spherical showcases allow visitors an all-round view, while ensuring the contents are secure and in a dust-free environment. The lighting has been especially designed to enhance the display of each exhibit, without causing heat damage. Swiss items predominate, with all the famous manufacturers represented, but there are also examples from other countries, and items range from exclusive designer models to a traditional pocket watch. Excellent audio-visual presentations complement the exhibits, and there's a centre for antique watch and clock repair attached to the museum. The museum library boasts one of the best collections of horological books and documents in the world. Since 1980, a wonderful carillon has been sighted in the museum grounds, a combination of timepiece, musical instrument and sculpture. On the hour, there's a melodic fanfare and colourful display which changes with the seasons. "12 mobile blades rotate in time to the music, which is produced by 24 tubular bells made of polished stainless steel. The bells can be driven either by computer or played from a keyboard. One factor which led to the necessity for accurate timekeeping was the coming of the railways, bringing the introduction of countrywide timetables. The first line reached La Chaux-de-Fonds as early as 1857, and over the next 40 years, the opening of other routes gradually linked this region into the growing Swiss railway network. The station was taken over by the Swiss Federal Railways in the early 20th century, and the majority of the tracks in the complex are therefore standard gauge. A wide variety of locomotives and stock pass through the station every day to many internal destinations, and there's also a daily service linking Switzerland with France. However, there are also 2-meter gauge lines running into the station. One takes passengers along the scenic route to Les Ponts de Martel, the other belongs to the Chemins De Fer Du Jura, whose network is an amalgamation of various, originally separate railway companies, which were combined into one organisation on the 1st of January 1944. The first route was opened by the TT Company in 1888. This meter gauge branch line linked Tramelan to the existing standard gauge main line at Tavannes. This was extended to Le Noirmont in 1913 by the TBN Company, the two being united in 1927. In 1892, a meter gauge line was opened by the SC Company from Saignelégier to La Chaux-de-Fonds, and 12 years later a standard gauge track operated by the Régional Saignelégier Glovelier continued the route to Glovelier. The line from Porrentruy to Bonfons, opened by the RPB in July 1901, was also incorporated into the group, despite having no interchange with the remainder of the CJ tracks. We begin our journey from La Chaux-de-Fonds to Glovelier, a route which will take us through the beautiful rural countryside of this unspoilt region. At the station throat, our track diverges from the standard gauge main routes, which enter a tunnel taking them towards the southern network, and also the Pont de Martel meter gauge line. For the first kilometre, our route passes through the streets of La Chaux-de-Fonds, with the rails embedded into the road surface. Frequent use of the train's whistle warns motor traffic of our approach. After passing through La Chaux-de-Fonds Est halt, we gain our own dedicated route. This halt, formerly known as Place d'Armes, was the terminus of the line for the first year of its existence, until the tracks were extended into the main station. Gradients are steep leaving the city, and we rapidly climb away from La Chaux-de-Fonds to reach the summit of the entire network at 1,073 meters above sea level. The meter gauge tracks over which we're now passing were originally the property of the Saignelégier Chaux-de-Fonds Company. Trains along this line were steam-hauled until 1953, and this was one of the last routes in Switzerland to operate with steam on scheduled services. The set in which we're travelling is one of the 4 BDE 442s, numbers 611 to 614, purchased in 1985. They operate alongside the 8 earlier BDE 441 sets, acquired for the electrification of the line in 1953. The track is cross-braced on steep gradients and tight curves by means of special V-shaped sleepers, a feature also found on other parts of the network, especially on the route above Tramelan. After crossing the cantonal boundary, we leave Canton Neuchâtel behind. For the remainder of our journey, we'll pass between cantons Bern and Jura. Maintenance work is constantly being carried out on the line, and the Chemins De Fer Du Jura is rightly proud of its safety and running records. One improvement took place in 1979, when the 129-metre-long concrete viaduct just before La Ferrière was built. All the lines on the network are single track, and passing is only possible at certain places along the line. At some unmanned stations, automatic crossing turnouts, which are changed by the passage of the train wheels, are used to avoid the driver having to stop unnecessarily. The line bisects the new 18-hole golf course near Les Bois. This popular complex boasts a superb 6,000-metre course set amid scenic rural surroundings with some surprisingly tricky water hazards. While winter snow prohibits golf between November and April, the luxurious clubhouse and restaurant attract members all the year round. The village of Les Bois, as its name suggests, is set in woodland, bois being the French word for woods. Many people enjoy strolling through the countryside, though a very popular leisure activity here also is horse riding. The local Franches Montagnes horses are perfectly adapted to the climate and terrain of this region. The breed is believed to be of Norman origin, and these sturdy steeds, which grow to around 15 hands high, are admirably suited to both riding and driving. Mares and juveniles live in herds on the grassland and forest of the region, although in summer months, when the heat and flies are troublesome, they're often brought indoors during the heat of the day. For those visitors not choosing to ride, but who wish to explore the region in the company of these friendly animals, the hiring of a covered wagon offers much fun. Excursions are possible of a few hours or even a few days around the region, with overnight accommodation in local hostelries arranged for both human and horse. The line from Chaux-de-Fonds to Glovelier was electrified in 1953 and utilizes a voltage of 1,500 DC. As the Swiss Federal Railways system at the extremities of the network works on 15 kilovolt AC, this means that the CJ has to obtain a separate supply, being unable to take advantage of the CFF power from Chaux-de-Fonds, Tavannes or Glovelier stations. The region through which we're passing becomes increasingly rural. with the surrounding grassland supporting herds of cows who enjoy the lush summer pasture of grass and wild flowers. One of the local specialities of the region is tête de moine, a soft cheese made from fresh Jura milk in one of the specialist dairies found in this area. Beside the track lies a teepee encampment, where visitors can enjoy a holiday under canvas in Wild West conditions. The Western style of riding developed by the cowboys of the USA is popular in this region and is admirably suited to long, gentle hacks through the forest and parkland of this Wild West Switzerland region. The settlement at Le Noirmont is an important one in the region, dating back to medieval times when early settlers made a large clearing in the Jura forest. Since the end of the 18th century, much of the population has been involved in watchmaking. In the early years, an occupation which could be combined with the primary business of farming and largely carried out during winter months. Today, each is a separate industry, together with light engineering, which has also established itself in the area. Le Noirmont station is a busy junction, with our route meeting the line from Tavannes. 2 or 3 trains are often found here at the same time, although on this occasion we're the first train to arrive. The CJ has many goods wagons passing over the rails, some on piggyback bogies from standard gauge transshipments hauled by dedicated locos. An important source of revenue to the company are the containers which transport waste between stations at each end of the network. These can often be seen in the sidings at Tavannes, awaiting further transportation by road. The first train arrived at Tavannes when the standard gauge line from Bienne to La Chaux-de-Fonds was opened in 1874. A concession was granted to the TT Company in 1881 for a meter gauge track to Tramelan, which came into service less than 3 years later. Almost 30 years on, a different organisation, the TBN, opened an extension of the tracks to Le Noirmont in the December of 1913. In 1928, the two companies merged to form the CTN and operate the whole line as one entity. Because of the incompatibility of gauges, our train lies on a dedicated line to the north of the station, with services on both the CFF and the CJ timed to connect. Tavannes is the lowest point on the line at 754 metres above sea level, so we'll gain height during most of our 23-kilometre journey to Le Noirmont. On the outskirts of the town, our line passes over a 246-metre-long concrete viaduct, constructed in 1966 as part of a programme of improvements on this line. The route over which we're passing is the oldest part of the network, being opened on the 16th of August 1884. The first line in the region to be built in meter gauge, it proved popular from the start. Tramelan's population doubled between 1884 and 1913, benefiting the railway by the increased demand for mobility. Trains were steam-hauled for the first 30 years of operation only. Electrification coming when the TBN opened their line to Le Noirmont using the new method of propulsion. Originally, the voltage was 1,200 volts DC, uprated to 1,500 volts DC in 1953. The substation, which converted the burn grid from 15,000 volts to a power suitable for the early trains, was situated at Tramelan. This community embraced the benefits of electricity as soon as it became available, the station buffet having electric lighting installed as early as 1895. The main workshops for all the rolling stock of the railway are situated at Tramelan station, and the complex is busy with the repair and renovation of a variety of stock, old and new. After Tramelan, our train must climb out of the valley, encountering gradients which increase to a maximum of 1 in 20, the steepest to be found on the entire CJ network. The line is also lengthened by means of 2 loops up and down the hillside, with open-air horseshoe curves at either end. The line from Tramelan to Le Noirmont opened on the 16th of December 1913, the proud possession of the Tramelan Brûle Noirmont Company. We make our way up the first sweep of the hillside, with views of the valley becoming ever more spectacular. At the end of the run, the track makes a 70-meter radius loop back on itself to continue in an easterly direction along the valley, gaining height all the while. The final horseshoe curve takes us away from Tramelan and on towards Le Noirmont, having gained 100 meters in height since leaving the station. Trains were powered with electricity from the opening of the line, the only part of the network always to have operated with this method of power. In 1913, 4 rail cars were purchased from SWS with electrical equipment by BBC. This region is popular with visitors all year round. In summer, there are ramblers, equestrians and cyclists enjoying the unpolluted air and beautiful countryside. In winter, this is a popular region to ski, with many cross-country pistes prepared through the woodland trails. The village of Les Bois was important in the coming of the railway to this region. It was the priest here, Father Paul Bourret, who championed the new mode of transport in the mid-19th century. His vision was to link Bâle with La Chaux-de-Fonds by means of a line running through the Franches Montagnes. After Les Bois, we reached the summit of this line at 1,050 meters above sea level. now follows a gentle descent to Le Noirmont. As we approach Le Noirmont, our tracks run alongside those to Glovelier, over which we'll soon pass. Le Noirmont lies less than 2 kilometers from France, the borderline at this point formed by the river Doubs. This tranquil waterway rises in the French Jura and flows in a northeasterly direction, forming the boundary between the two countries for some 45 kilometers. This lovely valley attracts walkers and sightseers to tarry and enjoy a timeless setting, or take a boat trip where the river widens to form a lake, the Lac de Brenay. A loop of the river flows into Switzerland before turning back on itself to return into French territory, joining the rivers Saône and Rhône before eventually disappearing into the Mediterranean. We continue on our way through the Jura countryside along the line towards Saignelégier and Glovelier. The original station at Le Noirmont was a wooden structure erected in 1892. This was replaced by the present stone building early in the 20th century. The tracks to Tavannes and Glovelier divide at the station throat, and the two lines run alongside each other for a few hundred meters before going their separate ways. Gradients along this section of the line are gentle, and our train can make good time on the run to Saignelégier. Saignelégier station was the terminus of the line from the opening of the route from Chaux-de-Fonds in 1892 until the arrival of the RSG tracks from Glovelier in 1904. Through running wasn't possible because the continuation tracks were originally standard gauge. Saignelégier is the chief settlement of the Franches Montagnes region of Canton Jura, with a population of around 2,000 inhabitants. However, this increases tenfold during the second weekend every August, when visitors flock here from far and wide to enjoy a very special event. The Marché Concours, a national equestrian festival, is a combination of street market, horse fair, and colourful spectacle. There are many tempting items for sale for young and old alike. A variety of hot and cold snacks are on offer throughout the day. For horse owners, there are plenty of equestrian items to look at, even perhaps a new saddle to be purchased. The horse lines attract numerous visitors, but not all will buy a new mount. The Marché Concours, first held in 1897, promotes the local Franches Montagnes breed of horse, whose popularity is demonstrated in the numerous fine specimens appearing in the festival. Although machinery is now widely used in agriculture here, every Jura farm proudly boasts its own herd of horses. Demonstrations of a wide variety of horsemanship take place over the 2 days, as well as colourful displays and folk pageants. The weekend is a fitting climax to months of meticulous preparation. An especially warm welcome was given to the 8 lovely yearlings, specially trained to pull this cart. Winners with everyone present. The young people of the region, dressed in a variation of local costume, race each other on their Franches Montagnes horses in a thrilling competition around the track. This is a popular feature and attracts numerous entries. Children in this region learn to ride almost before they can walk, and staying on a galloping mount poses no problems for these riders, even without the assistance of a saddle. The most spectacular of the races are the various wagon and chariot contests. The competition is fast and furious when 4 chargers pull the colourfully decorated flat wagons, used for general farm duties for the remainder of the year. Since 1963, 2 different Roman chariot races have been a feature of the concours. One is a reenactment of the spectacle in the Hollywood film Ben-Hur. Either 2 or 4 horses pull the chariots, and the contestants enter into the spirit of the event by dressing up in suitable attire. While the younger contestants racing with 2 horses favoured a simple tunic, the drivers of 4-horse teams look resplendent in colourful satin cloaks.
Et qui avait gagné également en 1995 est en tête solidement installé au commandement derrière reste avec ses 4 chevaux, toujours en avantage de quelques longueurs sur l'attelage de Frédéric Fréda qui essaie de se lancer à la poursuite alors qu'André Jean-Bourquin est 3e précédant l'attelage numéro 5 de Pierre Alain.
Horses and drivers have been practicing hard for this day, and competition is keen to win the laurels. The winner is Gabriel Ray, a popular win for a local man, whose farm lies only a couple of kilometres from the arena. We've now travelled over 26 kilometres since the start of the journey at Chaux-de-Fonds, but still have almost as many kilometres left to go before reaching the end of the line at Glovelier. The route over which we're passing was opened by the Régional Saignelégier Glovelier Company on the 21st of May 1904. These tracks were standard gauge from the opening in 1904 until 1948, when the line was closed for 5 years to allow conversion to meter gauge to facilitate through running. With trains now able to run from La Chaux-de-Fonds and Tavannes right through to Glovelier, the whole route was given a grand reopening on the 4th of October 1953. There'd been a debate to standardize the line from La Chaux-de-Fonds to Glovelier as early as 1901, although at that time the debate was whether to convert the line from La Chaux-de-Fonds to Saignelégier to standard gauge rather than continue with narrow gauge. A line passing through the villages of Montfaucon and Saint-Bray further up the hillside was originally mooted. However, this was not deemed practical and a lower route was constructed. The station at Pré-Petitjean was originally named Montfaucon, the village it serves. Although today the station is quiet, at certain times it can become a busy junction with bustle and noise, and the gentle sound of steam escaping from a smoking chimney. The complex of sheds beside the station are the cause of this excitement, as this is the headquarters of l'Attraction, the group which has organized regular steam excursions along the CJ's lines since 1993. They operate with 2 Portuguese Malay locomotives, E164 and E206, which formerly worked on lines in the Douro valleys to the east of Oporto. E206 is a splendid sight as she powers through the countryside. She was built in Germany by Henschel & Son in 1913 and underwent a full restoration at Meiningen before arriving in Switzerland. She has a top speed of 40 kilometers per hour, so her journeys have to be fitted in around the much faster electric sets which are operating the scheduled services along the line. Passengers travel in a variety of old coaches. It's possible to enjoy refreshments in the dining car or a specially arranged open-air meal. The steam train is an unusual vehicle through the streets of La Chaux-de-Fonds, a real contrast to the 21st century setting. For enthusiasts of old electric traction, a day out on one of the original TBN rail cars from 1913 could do more than just take them back in time. The terrain here is wild, almost bandit country. Suddenly, out of the woods rides a fearsome Wild West gang intent on raiding the train. Repeated gunfire is enough to convince the driver to come to an unscheduled halt. 2 of the passengers are taken hostage by the bandit gang, who issue their ransom demand before heading off into the surrounding woods. After a short pause, the bandit chief returns to see if his conditions have been met, and he's successful in relieving the passengers of their valuables. The 2 hostages brought out of their captivity are once more restored to their companions. However, these raiders turn out to be in a generous mood, and all their booty is returned to its rightful owners. Once more, the train continues on its leisurely excursion, leaving the bandits to ride into the sunset, conveyed by original horsepower. We continue our peaceful journey in the modern electric set, confident that no unscheduled ambushes will befall us before reaching Glovelier. The difficulty of construction on this section of the line meant that the tracks took over 3 years to build. The rugged nature of the terrain necessitated the excavation of the 8 short tunnels found on this stretch of the line. In order for the line to lose 300 meters in height and descend to the valley floor without rack assistance, the track was laid along the valley side, with a tight horseshoe curve returning the way back on itself below the upper level. At the end of this loop, the train has to make a reversal before resuming its original direction. The tunnel at the end of this run along the valley is the longest, at 149 meters in length. It opens out straight onto the 200-meter radius horseshoe curve, which turns our track back to descend to the valley floor. The reversal at Tavannes is today an easy affair, with our driver merely having to climb out of his cab and walk back along the length of the set to renew his duties. However, in the days of steam, this was a much lengthier process, with the locomotive needing to be turned 180 degrees on the turntable formerly located here to run around its train. This halt, not accessible by road, is used by walkers in summer. At the end of the Tavannes valley, the countryside opens out as our line enters the outskirts of Glovelier. Rounding a final bend, our meter gauge tracks run alongside the standard gauge main line from Porrentruy to Delémont. Until the change of gauge in the 1950s, the two lines were compatible, but now our route has to be kept completely separate. Our meter gauge journey ends here in Glovelier at the rear of the main station building. It's possible to travel from here on one of the fleet of CJ buses, which link the railway to outlying villages and towns, providing a popular service for both local people and visitors alike. However, we continue by rail along the standard gauge main line, which has been operated by the Swiss Federal Railways since the beginning of the 20th century. The first train arrived at Glovelier from Delémont in 1876, and the tracks were extended to Porrentruy the following year. While there have been many proposals over the years to extend the CJ's meter gauge tracks to Delémont by means of a third rail, nothing has ever come of the project. Along the route, it's well worth pausing at Saint-Arzin, an unspoilt village nestling on the banks of the River Doubs. This picturesque settlement owes its foundation to an Irish hermit, Ursicinus, who made his home here in the 7th century. 200 years later, a Benedictine monastery was established, with a town growing up around it within a few centuries. Although it has very early origins, many of the present buildings date from the 15th century, when rebuilding was necessary following a destructive fire, which swept through the settlement in 1403. The lovely old bridge which spans the River Doubs dates from 1728. It's only a short train ride from Saint-Arzin to one of the major cities of Canton Jura, Porrentruy. The station here is busy since not only mainline trains stop here, but the Chemins De Fer Du Jura also operates out of the station. The CJ runs services along an 11-kilometre branch line to Bonfort on the French border. It was the proximity to foreign soil that decided the builders to utilise standard gauge track, even though this is a minor line, to ease interchange of stock in time of war. The line, which opened on the 14th of July 1901, was operated with steam for the first 50 years. It was electrified in 1952 to 15 kilovolts AC, the same voltage as the main federal line. 2 BDE 44 sets were purchased for the change of power. These were replaced in 1968 and 1980. The 3 shunting locos purchased for electrification are still in use on the line today. In 1910, the line was extended from Bonfort across the border to Vetterhaus, then part of Germany, later a French town. Services were suspended at the start of the First World War, and although the route was reopened at the end of hostilities, it was shut again in 1939. Passenger services never reopened, and the cross-border line has been completely closed since 1970. Porrentruy has always been an important strategic settlement and was governed by the French Counts of Artois in the 11th century. The town is dominated by the castle complex, built on a rocky outcrop overlooking the river La Lane. The earliest remaining part of the old fortifications is the 13th century Tour Refuse, which stands some 45 metres high. In 1271, the area passed under the control of the Prince-Bishops of Bâle, and the old chateau became one of their residences. Much of the original castle was destroyed by fire in 1558, and the subsequent rebuilding took place in a more modern and comfortable style. It continued to serve as an episcopal residence until 1792, when Napoleon conquered the region. The old city at the foot of the castle complex is a pleasing collection of mainly 17th and 18th century buildings, and it's a pleasure to stroll around the elegant streets. In 1988, the prestigious Wacker Prize was awarded to the town for its superb preservation work. So for a truly independent view of Switzerland, explore the Jura region and its efficient railway for a really memorable excursion.